Hello, welcome to All Day. This is Derek, and with me is both Setzer and Chestin again this week. Say hello, boys.
Hi.
Howdy.
How have you guys been this week?
Been a good week.
Oh, I have had a long week.
Yeah, well, you're moving in the house and getting it all set up. I imagine it was a long week.
Yeah, the yard was left in such disrepair that we've spent most of this week kind of getting that under wraps. And yesterday we dug up some tree roots and had a jolly old time with that. And got to use a hatchet.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
Like that
like that
book,
book.
Hatchet.
Yeah, I was about to say, just like the book, man.
Reliving all your grade school fantasies. Like, oh, I can't wait to go out into the wilderness.
I can't wait to get in a plane crash and then have to use a hatchet to survive. Thank you, Gary Paulson, wherever you are.
Yeah, as I say, topical book references. We're going to be talking about The Giver later.
House of
All of our
Scorpion.
favorite 90s books. Later we'll rank our top 10 Babysitters Club mysteries.
We also got Number of the Stars. We're going to have some hot banter on that later.
Don't even get me started on Dune, boys.
So, have you guys played anything this week? I know that Setzer has started a new job, so I assume his week has been light. But what about you, Cheston?
I played a little bit this week. It was a little bit busy for me, but I did squeeze in some more Paper Mario.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you boys mind, but can we go into a quick little spoiler huddle?
absolutely.
Go
Spoiler.
ahead. I'm never going to play
Take
that
a little
game.
tea here. Yeah, I know you won't, but somebody listening, someone, if you have any interest in playing this game at all, I would skip ahead, say 3 minutes to be safe.
All right, there you go. There's your warning.
There's your warning. So, anyways, Paper Mario, still liking it quite a bit. Really haven't encountered any issues. I was really surprised that this game had a shocking and somewhat emotional story moment, and I wanted to get Derek's reaction to it. So, Paper Mario Origami King does not have traditional companions, but you do have characters that follow you. You have a little origami girl named Olivia, who's basically the player cipher because Mario doesn't talk. And then you have a few other people you meet along the way, including a little Bob-omb without a fuse, and he goes by the name Bobby. But when you encounter Bobby, he basically has no memories of anything. He has amnesia because he's an RPG character, and you take him on your adventures around the world, and he develops some kind of personality. He's always very thankful for the adventures you take him on, and eventually you take him to this desert area, and a giant boulder comes up and smashes the other companion, Olivia. And this is where the game takes a bit of a turn, because this boulder smashes the other character, and Bobby says, "Oh, I know what to do." And you go on what to me at the time seemed like a weird side piece. Like it seemed like a total side quest. I couldn't get the connection to what was going on. You go to some cruise ship and you have a really cool encounter with a squid boss. And then Bobby finds what he was looking for, which is this little red box. And that's when it occurred to me that what was about to happen was that Bobby the Bob-omb was about to commit suicide to save your other companion from their boulder-shaped grave. And this really took its toll on me. Maybe it was because it was an early morning and I was very tired, but I was not ready for this to happen in a happy, peaceful Mario game. And I just kept thinking they would, pull their punch. Maybe he'd blow up and then it'd be like a Looney Tunes thing. He'd reappear again, all peaceful. But no, sure enough, he takes you to the boulder. He puts his deceased friend's fuse on his head, and he blows himself up in slow motion, and then he's gone, and that's it.
And and he's mourned.
And he's mourned like the other characters, like, oh, it'll just never be the same. And I read online that if you go back to one of the areas you visited with him and you sit on some of the benches, that your characters will have dialogue about him. And I just can't believe they did this.
It's so crazy. Like they treat it so seriously that it's like, did I switch the game or something? Like, what's going on?
I can't
I
believe
mean,
this bomb blew up.
Well, hey, you know what? No one asked your opinion, Mister.
I mean, obviously it's what bombs do, but it's like, at this point, he's developed a personality. You're attached to him, and it's a goofy game. So you're just thinking they'll be like, "Oh, that's the joke. He comes right back because that's what Bob-ombs do." But no, he's just gone, and all the characters are super sad and depressed about it. And I was like, man, that's pretty harsh.
Either Paper Mario 64 or Cells in Your Door, I don't remember which one, had a Bob-omb companion, and they blew up, and they would just like be fine because that's part of their attack. So it was kind of weird. Like, wait a minute, wasn't Paper Mario canon didn't it determine that they can survive blowing up? I mean,
Paper
come
Mario
on,
canon.
come on, folks.
Excuse me, in episode 1 of Paper Mario.
Exactly.
It's The Last of Us too.
Yeah,
All
it was
over
shocking.
again. It's a commentary on all those bobbers that you kill playing normal Mario games. They had lives, families, dogs with names.
Yeah, I told Derek that it was mind-blowing to me that Paper Mario the Origami King kills more primary characters than the episode of Game of Thrones when the White Walkers attack.
I know, it's crazy. This little baby's game for children somehow
Somehow
did
they
more.
found a way.
Setzer, what they do with him blowing up is like they do like this anime trope where they like zoom in on the Bob-omb's dumb face. He's like squinting his eyes and he says, "I know what I must do," and like it feels like just out of the most generic shonen anime you've ever seen. And then he says, "We must go sailing," and I'm like, "Oh, this is just a dumb joke." So it plays into thinking like they're just gonna bail out of this stupid bomb killing himself scenario. So there you
Would
go.
you say they subverted your expectations?
I would, yeah. Ryan Johnson really just blew my mind when he took over Origami King's production.
Pun
Thanks.
intended.
He blew your no, you beat me to it.
There you go. Ha
Listen, buddy, I'll handle the dad jokes here.
Well, you are the dad.
That's true. You're the only
Yeah.
license holder here.
That's right. You ain't got a license.
All right, so Chestin, what else have you been playing?
So on a different note, a game where there are no, so far at least, story moments that leave me feeling anything other than apathy is Star Wars The Fallen Order, which Setzer has played and has told me about here and there. And I don't know, Setzer, did you find the story to be especially noteworthy in the game, or am I just off base?
Well, I'll tell you what. I personally did not find the story to be interesting, but I expected you to have the opposite reaction because I know you're a big Uncharted guy. And I always, like, when I was playing this game, I told you guys before that I always assumed it was kind of like a mix of Dark Souls, which I'm familiar with, and Uncharted, which I'm not. So I expected you to have a more positive take on the story under the assumption that this was, like, just how an Uncharted game goes, right?
I don't know. I think the difference is that to me, none of these characters have really much going on. There's nothing really interesting about Cal Kestis and his cadre of people that he's flying around the galaxy with. To me, especially in the Star Wars context, they feel like they could be any assortment of different characters that I've already met before in movies or books or other games or what have you. So the story is just, nothing to me. It's also extremely like a filler episode of an anime. Let's go find all the young Jedi in the galaxy, which itself isn't very interesting, especially when you know the trajectory of that story in general. Maybe I'll be surprised. I don't. It doesn't sound like I will be because I know you're not too keen on it, and one of our other friends has expressed similar feelings. However, that said, I do think the game is quite fun
Mm-hmm.
in pretty much every regard. I think, and this is something I'll attribute to you, at some point you said it feels more like Star Wars than any of the recent movies or several games that have come out recently. I definitely echo those sentiments. I think little things like, holding up your lightsaber when you're in a dark area are just kind of corny, but it feels very Star Wars to me. There's a lot of other little details, especially as you start to build out your Jedi repertoire. Because when you start, you have Metroid syndrome. You've lost all your abilities because you've lost your connection to the Force. And so you can't do the things you used to do. But as you build out that assembly of moves and such, you really start to feel like the all-powerful Jedi characters that you see in such hit movies as Star Wars, The the rise of Skywalker. I just had a pretty big set piece moment. I think it was the one that was featured in the E3 presentation before that game came out, where you're storming Kashyyyk in a walker unit. And that moment alone felt way more Star Wars to me than even one match of Battlefront 2 that I played before.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that comparing it to maybe matches you've played in Battlefront is a little unfair because that's never going to really nail the tone of a movie scene given the dynamic nature of the game mode. You and I actually played the Battlefront 2 story mode a couple years ago when we got that game out of the Redbox, when Redbox still did games. And I know neither of us were impressed. You actually fell asleep during the last mission, I believe.
I don't know. I think at some point, and this is totally off the beaten path, but I think the main issue with that game was it was, big explosion-filled action movie Star Wars style of game. But then the story had so many segments where it's like, all right, now you're going to sneak around. And it was one of those segments where we just kept failing because the stealth was so bad. And yeah, it just put me out. It definitely did not feel exciting like you want a Star Wars property to feel.
Yeah, but as for Fallen Order, I think that it does just feel tonally and aesthetically more like Star Wars. And I can't really put my finger on why, especially relative to the new movies. Again, we're not going to rant about them here. Maybe we'll do a special episode where we rant about new Star Wars stuff and how much you love it. But, something about it, even though the story, like you said, didn't really grip me at any given point and kind of felt a little picaresque at times, a little meandering, it still felt more like Star Wars. Like a boring Star Wars story that's set in Star Wars as opposed to a boring story that's kind of has a Star Wars logo on it, we'll say.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a forgettable action movie, but at the very least it makes you feel the things that you want a Star Wars to make you feel.
Yeah, I don't know how far in you are and I don't want to spoil anything, but there are towards the middle, towards the last third of the game, especially, it feels a little more like why are we here? Why is this? It's such a detour. But generally speaking, it's not like the new movies where everything just feels like, oh Lord, it just feels like it's exhausting, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
too much. Before I leave this game behind, I have to mention, because nobody else will, that when you say this is like Uncharted, it's really not. It's more like Tomb Raider, and it's actually more like, and this is a real deep cut for everyone at home, the
Superman.
2008 Prince of Persia.
Oh
Those are the
boy.
two. Those are the two games I think it draws most from in terms of the action platforming.
All five people that played that game were like whooping it up at home. Like,
That's
yeah!
that's a great game. That's a great game, and I will proudly represent it. And I go every year thinking maybe this is the year they finally develop a sequel to it because they kind of just left us in the lurch. But I know at this point that I'm just stupidly optimistic about that.
Someone took the like fail states in video games are a bad form of game design shitpost seriously and made a game.
It's extremely influential because I'm not going to get into this. This is not the place to discuss this, Derek.
well, here's something you can get into. What functionally, what is the difference between Uncharted and Tomb Raider? Because I've never played either one.
Okay, I will try my best to describe this because I can feel it in my body when I play those games.
There is none.
But no, there absolutely is. So I think the thing is that Uncharted, because it's made by Naughty Dog, which is a studio that is very concerned with how people play their games and how they experience different parts of it, every motion in Uncharted feels very choreographed. Even when you have full control of Drake, it still feels like you are on a path of some sort. All of his movements feel like they are intentional. It never feels like the player is in 100% control, but enough control that you feel engaged to continue. It feels polished, in a lot of ways too, that Tomb Raider does not. Tomb Raider, to me, the difference is that you have such a freedom of control. A lot of Tomb Raider's sections encourage you to explore a little bit, to go off the beaten path to find tombs. And also, just like in terms of the platforming, in Uncharted, a lot of the platforming happens for you. You jump at a wall and you grip onto it, you get your grappling hook out and you swing, and then you really just control the jumping on and jumping off. Like again, it's very choreographed. It's engaging because it makes you feel like you are playing through a real movie, and in a real movie, if your character moved like a video game character, you would feel weird. In Tomb Raider, you don't have that. Whenever you're doing the platforming segments, you have a lot of control, like in Fallen Order, if you're jumping to a wall covered with vines or rocks, you have to press an input at the right time in order to make that connection with the surface. So I think the thing is control versus, or rather, a lack of control in Uncharted, because they take some of it away from the player, and then Fallen Order, Tomb Raider, where the player has more freewheeling movement, and it feels more video gamey rather than Hollywood cinema, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I guess I can see what you're saying, where, Fallen Order definitely does give you a lot more video gamey freedom.
Yeah, Cal moves very loosey goosey. Like when you hold that block button in combat, if you are not locked on, he'll do some really silly things. Like he'll just rotate around, holding that lightsaber out like he's blocking from every which way. In an Uncharted game, if you were to hold the block button, it would always make sure you are focused towards an enemy so that it doesn't look stupid when Nathan Drake is doing what he's doing. But Respawn does not really care. And I mean, it's not a better or worse thing. It's a difference of perspective. And overall, I would say that this game, gameplay-wise, is much more interesting than an Uncharted. So,
I heard it here first.
Yeah.
Uncharted bad.
no. I'm not getting into it. I'm not getting into it.
I will say that, given the game's obvious Dark Souls heritage and the kind of precision that sort of style requires, I really can't see it meshing well with more of a cinematic movement
not at
style.
all. No.
So I can, again, having not played Uncharted or Tomb Raider, I can definitely see, what may have led them to make that kind of choice.
Yeah, I think it's the right choice. I think Respawn has. That's one of the things that kind of blows me away about this game, is if you think about that developer, they are known for one of the most popular, influential first-person shooters of the past 2 decades, and then they're also, famous for their work on Titanfall 2. So this game is like a total out of left field. Here's Dark Souls, here's a little bit of Metroid Prime, here's a little bit of Tomb Raider, and we've just all thrown that into a blender with a Star Wars license, and somehow it didn't come out terrible. Like that's pretty impressive.
I'll say, it's a game you can respect.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
EA has not ruined them yet.
Yeah. I was really shocked when I played this game, because this was another Redbox game for me, actually, and I got it right after it came out, and it was buggy, it was janky.
Yes.
I don't know if that's improved or not.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. But, it was still a good time. It was still a good time, and I was shocked by how respectable it was.
After you spent, 50 minutes bashing Uncharted, talking about how it's baby's game, suppose it's time to move on. So I've played 2 games this week that I feel like talking about anyway. The first is the hot new game, Fall Guys. That's the MXC Ninja Warrior, Takeshi's Castle, whatever the hell you want to call it. It's that sort of game with like cute bean people. It was released on PS Plus earlier in the week, and it's also on Steam, I think. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. It's kind of like wacky controlling, I suppose, making it feel a little different. But I like it. I don't think it has a lot of staying power. I don't care what anyone really tries to tell you. I feel like the games are, once you master them, it makes the barrier to entry for new players kind of difficult. Because I'm thinking about Fortnite and how you can you luck your way into a kill or two and just sneak around the map and end at top 20 or something. Like I've done it in the 2 or 3 times I've played Fortnite. I've been in the top 10 or something. But in this game, I'm already like there's races where I can get in the top 2 or 3 every time without fail. And I feel like if I'm already doing that in the early rounds, there are people that are going to get really good at games in the later rounds where it's just going to be impossible for anyone to like win that doesn't play the game all the time, and that's going to take a lot out of the appeal to it, I believe. So I think in order for this game to succeed, they need to make more like obstacles, like every month or so. They need to have a couple new courses, keep varying things up because this is clearly a game that they want to be a long-term success because the title screen looks like Fortnite. It's like season 1. You can earn all these goals. You like level up like you do in a battle royale junk fest game. You buy stuff. They have virtual currency. So they want this to be a big deal. So if they want it to be a big deal long term, they need to make sure things change frequently.
And you mentioned wacky controls. When you say that, do you mean in the sense of
I mean,
something
it's just
like
physics. It's
Gang
not.
Beasts?
No, no, no. If it was like Gang Beasts, I wouldn't play it. I'd be like, I'm done with this shit. I mean, it's more like physics.
You are a tremendous baby.
I hate Gang Beasts, man. That game sucks.
You're a monster.
I don't care for it either, personally.
It doesn't
You're
make
both
any sense
terrible
to control.
people. Well, it does too, but it's okay.
I guess if you're like got a 4D chess mind and you can see like other planes of existence, it's easy to control. But
There's only so many games where you can make a Larry David character model and dominate 4 other people in a battle royal.
It's called WWE 2K20. You can make your own Larry David.
You wouldn't want to play that.
I would say that this game probably would not appeal at all to Setzer.
Yeah, I mean, knowing what I know about the game, I can tell you right off, I don't really care for these kind of like repetitive match-made games where you just go into a match, you win or lose, you go into another match, you win or lose. So you're on the money there.
It's it's fun for quick bursts. Like, you like have 30 minutes and you want to play something, but you don't want to load up an RPG, which is what I would do. I think after this initial hype wave wears off, where you see people playing all day and like sharing, I think it's going to crater a little bit. But I mean, I've been wrong before. I was dead wrong about Splatoon. I believe I said it was going to be a big blunder that no one would care about. And it ended up being a pretty successful little thing for Nintendo. So, what do I know? But I don't know if I see this having long-lasting legs. Really, it is neat, and I think there's value in playing a game like this when it's hot and like everyone's into it.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It was free. I mean,
for sure. Well,
it's only $20 if you buy it, and I mean, $20 for a few weeks of fun. I mean, whatever.
Yeah. Well, because like it reminds me of. Oh, I don't remember what it reminds me of. That's a damn shame. What a dumb thing to say.
Oh, you too have JRPG syndrome.
There's like a hot new release and you're around it, and it's kind of cool to be part of the zeitgeist. But I can't think of a specific game for that.
The Last of Us 2.
Oh yeah.
The zeitgeist.
Yeah, be part of
zeitgeist.
Be part of the conversation. Talk about all the dogs that died along the way. Oh,
you all are monsters.
I can't pet the heckin' doggo.
What a shame.
I know. All right, well, moving on. I played the other game I played, and this is what I played the majority of the week, was Setzer's, I think it was your number 2 game of all time, or number 3, Bloodborne.
Yes.
So, that game is amazing. That's all I can really say about it.
Told you.
It's really frustrating at times, but that's part of the design. It encourages you to just go to work over and over again on these like bosses and scenarios. But when you finally succeed and breaks through, whew, there's not much like it. I'll say that much. It's something else. From an aesthetic standpoint, I love the way the game looks. Like the gothic horror is just really interesting. What's Lovecraftian? Would that be the accurate way to put it? No?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a mix. It starts gothic, it goes Lovecraftian. There's a little more like cheesy 50s aliens too.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, the Celestials are basically greys.
But it all comes together.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it never feels like the weird, goofy celestial aliens don't feel out of place in this world, which is crazy because if you look at all the different types of beasts in it, like you would figure they would stand out, but they really don't. Everything kind of melds together. It's one cohesive world. I enjoy it quite a bit. It's something that I can't like play for 6 or 7 hours straight or whatever because I'm going to get frustrated at some point. Like the final boss of the DLC, the Orphan of Kos, I had to take a break after like 5 or 6 tries because he was just destroying me. It was a brutal battle, but when I won, oh man, it was something else. I like had almost did a celebratory lap around the house. It was great. I don't quite grasp the from nature of storytelling, so I didn't get much out of the lore. I've looked it up. It seems like an interesting story, but that doesn't factor at all into what I felt about the game. I just think it's great. It's worthy of all the praise it gets. I have nothing but good things to say about it. Well, I mean, it's a little choppy, but who cares about that?
Spoken like a true console plebe.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, I don't need everything to be 60 frames per second, so it's okay.
Once again,
Yeah,
spoken like a true console plebe.
I know. But yeah, I think we covered Bloodborne pretty well last week in Setzer's list. But if you're on if you're on the fence and you really want to try a From game, that's a good one. It's a really good one. And as I said last time, Chestin would hate it, so don't play it.
No, okay.
Okay.
Noted.
Okay. We actually have news to discuss this week, so no special zany segment for you. So why don't you kick us off with where to start, Setzer?
Well, I figured we would start with the latest on Halo Infinite, as we have the past few weeks. What's really interesting to me is they announced that multiplayer for this game is going to be free to play, but they are not reducing the cost of Xbox Live. So you have to pay a subscription to play a free game. I thought that was like totally baffling.
Wait. I'm confused. So you're telling me that this game, the multiplayer, is free to play, as in you don't need the game to play it.
So
But the
here's
subscription
the deal.
itself is in place.
Right. So you pay $60 for the campaign. You pay $0 for the multiplayer. But in order to access that multiplayer, you have to pay $15 a month to play on Xbox Live.
Oh. I thought it was something like Fortnite where it's just free to play even if you don't have Xbox Live.
Well, but Fortnite, actually, this gets into the weeds of the Xbox Live ecosystem. But on PS4 and I believe even the Switch, you do not need a subscription to either service to play a free-to-play game like Fortnite. However, on Xbox Live, to play a free-to-play game online, you do have to have a subscription.
Still? Do you still need Netflix? Do you still need like
No, not for
Gold?
Netflix.
Okay,
Not for
thank you.
Netflix.
I was like, I know that used to be the case, and I was like, they better still not be doing that.
No, they at least woke up in that sense, but their free-to-play infrastructure is still woefully behind. Even Nintendo.
Wow, that's pretty bad. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I guess I shouldn't have.
Yeah,
You should
so
not.
time will tell if they make an exception. I don't think they've actually stated one way or the other, but where's the standard here? Is it only first-party games? Is this like the one free-to-play game where you don't have to pay the subscription? Are you gonna have to pay the subscription anyway? It's just baffling to me that they
There's
choose
been a
to
lot
make
of
these
rumblings.
things.
There's been a lot of rumblings about Xbox Live having and undergoing changes of some sort. There were rumors about it going away as a subscription model, which were debunked because Microsoft came out and said, no, we can be consumer friendly, but not that consumer friendly.
You are going
And
to pay.
you are going to pay, but I want to say that there were also rumblings about the free to play barrier being stripped because, I mean, if you're going to get into a console war slugfest with Sony and the biggest game, or one of the biggest games still in the world, I know it's fallen off a little bit, but, Fortnite, you're going to say on one platform you don't need a subscription fee, on one you do? I mean, obviously you would go with the place where you don't have to pay anything to play that game.
You can just play it on phones, so who cares?
I mean, not all the
Speaking of
kitty winks
which,
like touch controls.
Xbox Game Pass is coming to Android, but not to iOS. They're bringing something like 100 games to Android, but Apple rejected the Xbox Game Pass because they can't manually approve every single Game Pass game for their store.
Yep.
Oh, so they can't babysit you properly. Well, there
Yeah.
you go.
Well, and it's if you've Apple user here, so I'll just take I'll take this one.
Take your lumps.
You all can hit the bench. So this isn't super surprising. They did have the app in beta, and I guess they just cut it short because it just ended up becoming such an unpleasant interaction with Apple. But it's hard to be surprised because even something like if you have the Kindle app on your iPad, I used to have an iPad and that used to be my e-reader of choice because I mean I used it for so many other things. I figured why not read on it too? But the act of buying a book on an iPad from Amazon store for the Kindle app is so complicated because of that same reason that Apple wants to manually approve everything you do on their platform. They do not like platforms where you can go in and buy stuff from other companies that aren't Apple, where Apple can't get a cut, where Apple doesn't have any control. It's at this point everybody knows Apple's controlling. So it's not really surprising. It's just kind of a bummer because I have to imagine that there are plenty of people like me, for example, who have an iPhone and who would at least like to try out xCloud, especially because they already have a Game Pass subscription, and now we're just totally locked out. I don't have an Android device, and Android tablets are barely a thing, so I mean, at this point, it's just not going to happen. It's kind
Yeah,
of sad.
man. I gotta ask, why do you put up with that?
I don't really know at
He
this
likes the
point.
iMessages. It's like, oh, the blue
No,
bubbles.
Yeah, he needs
well,
those blue bubbles.
for full context, I do with my work. I get provided an Apple laptop and an iPad, so it just makes it easier for me to have a phone that's the same, so then I can have my messages go between devices. And over the years, it has become harder and harder, especially with Android catching up. As far as I think for me, it's phone talk here is the fact that Android doesn't have a streamlined operating system, or used to not have a very streamlined operating system interface where your phone might not get the new operating system because of X reason or Y reason. But I know that the Pixel has really brought things together. So at this point, this is just another reason to not have an iPhone.
I was just gonna say you're paying for a brand with Apple,
It's a status symbol.
right? Well, it's so the hot babes don't judge you for the green bubbles. You gotta have the blue.
Hey, I can't like your text if you have green bubbles.
Sure, you can't find something I say interesting without the
Actually, you
little emoji.
can. You know what
Yes,
that
but it's
does?
terrible. It's terrible. It
It's
sends the other
awful.
people text. And our dad actually, because my wife did that to one of his texts, and he thought that she had literally typed out, I liked this text or whatever.
Yeah,
And so one time I sent him something, and he literally on his Android phone typed out, I liked whatever my text said. I had to call him and explain. It's like, listen, Dad, that's a feature of an iPhone. You can't, she's not actually typing that. She's holding her finger over your text and clicking a thumbs up. And it's just sending that to you so you know that your text was received and approved.
wonderful.
Gotta love technology.
Apple sucks.
Speaking of online games, Pikmin 3, announced for the Switch, immediately removed from the Wii U shop.
So I'm of two minds on this one.
Yeah.
One, I feel like everyone that has a Wii U, like if they want Pikmin 3, they either have it or they don't at this
So
point.
both of us and three other people.
Yeah. So all five of us that have Pikmin 3 are like, yeah, we got it. But on the other hand, I don't like this trend of because they tried to do this with Tropical Freeze too, where they have a new game coming out, like, well, you can't buy it on the old platform anymore. I know, like, nobody owns a Wii U, but it's kind of silly to take away the option to buy it on there, because it's not like the Switch is a backwards compatible platform. I don't think anyone's going to be like, well, I want to get Pikmin 3, but I don't want to play it on my cool portable system. I want to play it on my stupid Wii U.
I want to
So
play it on this tablet with a 240p
the
screen.
that feels like a little play school toy. I think that's where I want to play Pikmin 3. So I don't really think this impacts their sales. So it seems very unconsumer friendly. But again, like, I don't really care because I feel like everyone that has Pikmin 3 on the Wii, I mean everyone that has a Wii U that wants Pikmin 3 has it. So whatever.
It's the principle.
Yeah, it is the
It's the
principle.
It
same
is.
kind of authoritarian megalomania as Apple.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
I think it's, as I said, I think it's very consumer unfriendly. I don't like it, but
I
I
think
mean, I can't get crazy mad
for
over it.
me, what's worse for me, because you can still, obviously, you can buy it physical. They can't destroy all the discs,
Right? They can
and
try.
well, they could try. And I've come to understand that you can still get the digital code from Amazon and then, use it on the Wii U store and download it. So there are still venues, but I believe they also took out the DLC, the ability to buy the DLC on the Wii U.
Oh, that's
So
bad.
if you're one of those 5 people who saw this video, and maybe like, Derek and I, when we talked about this, both of us were kind of like, I didn't even realize there was DLC. So if we saw this trailer and were interested in the DLC part, maybe didn't want to buy the whole game again, we wouldn't be able to pay the, $10 or whatever it is to enhance our Wii U edition of the game. But yeah, I'm kind of with both of you. I mean, it's the principle of things. It's scummy. It's really not especially surprising. But it's also like, on scale of consumer unfriendly things, this is probably going to impact maybe maybe like 4 people. I mean, I've seen people online say, "Well, some people bought a Wii U because they want to save money." And I want to say, well, no, they
Not
didn't,
really.
because you're not saving money as a Nintendo system, so your games are still going to be expensive,
And I think the
and
Wii
you're
U is like $250 right now on
yeah,
secondhand
exactly. So you can get a
markets.
Switch Lite for $200. So I mean, that person doesn't exist, but it still is kind of lame for the
Oh,
people who still have a Wii U and suddenly want to play Pikmin 7 years later.
here, I'll tell you who's buying a Wii U for $250. People that want to pirate on their Wii U. So they
Yes,
don't
and they
even
already have
care.
Pikmin 3
Yes. So they don't need the ability to buy Pikmin 3. They're
and the
pirating it.
DLC,
Yeah.
and they
So,
packed in all kinds of fun characters.
right. So they're already having a better experience. So let people enjoy their Wii U's,
Yeah,
I
they probably
suppose.
put purple Pikmin in Pikmin 3 where they belong instead of those stupid rock Pikmin.
I'm not a fan of like removing the option to buy things digitally. I think it's a bad precedent in general because I'm thinking of I've wanted to buy Earthworm Jim HD on the Xbox 360 for a long time.
What is your problem?
Yeah, I wanted to get it for a while, and every time I try to like, you can't buy it on the Xbox Marketplace anymore, and I'm like, why did they delist it? So
Okay, you found the one use case more fringe than the person with a Wii U who wants to buy Pikmin 3 in 2020.
right.
You, sir, have problems.
Well, it's not my fault. I want to play Earthworm Jim in HD. I don't know what's so wrong about that.
And be disappointed after you get past the first level and
Right, when I
realize
get to the
everything else
stupid
is
water
not good.
level, when I get to
Yeah,
the
like,
like,
oh
yeah, I'm like,
man, this isn't that fun.
right,
And it was a lot funnier in the 90s.
but I want the option to be able to buy it. I think that stands. I think it sucks when things are kind of lost at time, and it's not like Pikmin's
Uh,
getting lost. But
no, I agree. It's like when Marvel vs. Capcom 3, didn't that lose the DLC
yes, it
off of the
lost. But
storefront?
it did, but then it came back on the PS4 and Xbox One. But I don't know if you can even get that stuff on PS3
Well,
and
right.
360
And I mean,
anymore.
that's like, that's a Disney thing. So every once in a while, that's just going to disappear for funsies.
The Vault.
I'm just thinking about Marvel vs. Capcom 3 sitting in the Disney vault next to like Cinderella. Like, oh, what are we going to watch today? Marvel
Wow,
vs. Capcom 3 Ultimate? What's that?
wow, you can be Mango Sentinel. Isn't that pretty?
Firebrand.
Oh boy.
Well, speaking of games that are coming to digital platforms, Sony's State of Play. Any
What do you
thoughts
all
there?
think about Crash 4?
Yeah. What was it? Dingo Dial's playable.
You can
Woohoo!
play as Dingo Dial.
I
I
like that the
know.
press release for it is like you can play it. Dingo Dial's back and playable, and I'm like, who gives a shit? It's Dingo Dial.
I, I, I have to admit, I thought that was pretty funny. Like, it's not like when Nintendo says you can play as Wario. Like in Mario 64 DS, when you could play as Wario, that meant something. But
Yeah.
in Crash, like Neo Cortex, that's kind of cool. But then if you
Yes.
go past him, it's like, you can play as Engine. All right,
Well, you might get that one kid that
Tiny. Okay.
you might get that one poor kid whose mother took on the Blockbuster every week to rent Crash Bash, and he's really into like Tiny Tiger. Like, oh,
You can play as
finally.
Apu Apu.
Oh, hell yeah.
Papu Papu. Sorry.
But it's like a funky mode in the Tropical Freeze. He's just invincible, just masking around everywhere.
Yeah. I thought Crash 4 looked I thought it looked pretty good. I'm more interested in that than I thought I'd be because I think the first three games are bad. It does look something about the way it looks is kind of off to me. Have either of you two noticed that?
No.
No?
Yes.
Looks fine. Okay, you have. Yes. What do you notice?
It looks a little clay. It looks a little plasticky.
Okay.
Something about it. I have the
Yeah.
same reservations about the Spyro remaster. I haven't played it, but when I
This
look at it, it looks a
this
little weird.
the Spyro remaster actually turned out pretty well, I thought, and I
It
was
looks
pretty
really good in
precious about
motion.
that series. Yeah, in motion it's quite nice. Even on the Switch, which is where I've been playing it, it's pretty nice, surprisingly. Yeah, you put a good the plasticky clay, that's a good way of describing it because when it's in motion, there's just something about it that looks strange, and I'm just wondering if when I play it myself, it'll look better or different. It does look well made, I should say. So I'm not. That's not a deterrent. It's just there's something
Hmm.
about the way it looks that does throw me for a loop a bit.
Do you know if it's going to be $39.99 or is it going to be full price? Toys
I
for
doubt
Bob
it. It sounds
Madness.
pretty. I mean, it sounds pretty comprehensive. They've talked about I want to say over 100 stages, and they
Wow.
were in the state of play. They went into depth on these really crazy filter modes. Like you have a mode where crashes moves are painting the world around you,
Well, that's
and
pretty
it
cool.
activates different areas and just some other different filters. So it seems like they're really trying to make this a big enough package that they can warrant charging 20 more for it than they did the Insane trilogy.
Well, that would take some work, but we will see.
Yeah, I think it looks nice. They had some. I don't. Did either of you watch the state of play? I kind of skipped through it a little bit.
I
No,
skipped
I don't really
around.
like watching these.
Okay. The only other thing that really occurred to me as very interesting was that Braid is coming back out
Yeah, I
with
saw
a,
that.
definitive edition, and the only reason that was interesting to me is that I'm just kind of surprised that hasn't happened until now. I mean, Braid is often considered the inflection point for indie games, at least on consoles. It was the game that made people feel okay spending $10 to $15 on a smaller game not published by a traditional developer. And it's finally back, and it's a lot of those games from back then have come back out. So it's weird to me that Braid is, just now sneaking back out.
Yeah, I feel like this was an Xbox exclusive, the original, for quite a while.
I think it did come to PS3 eventually, but it certainly took a while. You're right. I think for me, what's interesting about Braid, besides its historical ramifications, is I'm just kind of surprised to see it come back as well in a new purchasable format because really the sticking point, part of what made that game really pop back when it came out initially was that it subverted your expectations as a player. And that really isn't as novel as it was in maybe, I don't know, 2008, whenever that game came out. So I will be interested to see if people play it and are just kind of turned off and they don't see why it was such a big deal back in the day.
Well, it was the first indie game I remember being like a big hit. I think even like Soulja Boy made a video about it.
He did,
It was
famously, yes.
yes, it was wild. So Braid's an important game, and you're right. It's kind of surprising it took this long for it to come back,
Yeah, I mean, I might check it out if it goes free on Game Pass or something, but like I
which
was
it
saying,
will.
I just don't think it will be. I think people will play it, and people who played it back then will be like, oh, that's kind of neat. But people who have never played it before and want to know what all the hubbub is about, I think they will be like, oh, this is like, okay.
You're gonna get some smarmy British YouTuber who goes, "Oi, you're playing as the villain the whole time. How unique!"
It's really an allegory for the making of the atomic bomb, so,
Is it?
I don't know. Apparently, it's, okay, I like the game, but
Jonathan Blows has a lot to say.
But like there's a lot of that game, like the part that isn't gameplay, like between missions or stages, there's like these books, and the books have words in them, as books do. And the books are like, and they're really vague. And I remember reading up back in the day, like, what was the point of all this? And apparently it was some kind of allegory for the Manhattan Project
Oh,
somehow.
that makes the game worse. I didn't know I was trying to say something. You know, I'm functionally illiterate, so
Jonathan
anything
Blow games are better the less you know about them.
I would say so.
Also in State of Play, I was really surprised to see two Chinese games pop up. Anno Mutation, which is kind of like a 2D, 3D cyberpunk game, and Genshin Impact, which is like a Breath of the Wild ripoff, basically.
That kind of looked neat. I remember seeing that and thinking it was Breath of the Wild like. I just didn't remember the name for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
Interesting looking.
graphics look really interesting, honestly,
Yeah.
in both of these games, matter of fact.
Well, they're very striking.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where these go, how these turn out, because you don't see a lot of AA, AAA Chinese games. Also mentioned in State of Play, Aeon Must Die. I don't know if you guys read about this.
I did. Yes,
Hmm.
it's a very interesting story, but go ahead.
Yeah, so apparently, right after this was featured in like a major Sony press conference, it came out that all of the developers quit, and the CEO of the company poached the IP out from under the founder of the company, and it's questionable if this game is ever going to be finished or released, or if there's going to be some kind of legal proceedings surrounding it. I mean, I've never really seen anything like this happen before.
Yeah.
Especially not a game that's like featured prominently in a video, that came out a week ago.
Yeah,
Like, that's very strange.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to keep our eyes on this one.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Like, did they not reach out to Sony? I mean, did Sony not reach out to them at all? Like, check on, like, it's crazy, like how something like that goes
How did it
through.
slip through? Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes me wonder if a lot of this, state of play and some of the other videos they've produced have just been sitting for a long time, and with the state of things, they've just been parsing it out and maybe they did not do all their legal checks and stuff.
maybe
I don't know.
not.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think Sony is still getting spun up on the PS5. They announced, Spider-Man is PlayStation exclusive in the Marvel whatever game. Uh,
The Avengers,
sure.
The Marvel, who
And
gives a shit? This
that
looks
thing.
like
yeah,
shit game.
basically.
Well,
Um,
yes, the game does look terrible, but you can be Spider-Man in it, so there you go.
yeah, but alongside that, there's a lot of rumors that they're investing very, very heavily in these sorts of timed exclusives, console exclusive DLC and content, the PlayStation Advantage, quote unquote. And I wonder if that's pretty much how PC has gone. The Epic Game Store over the last year and a half. I wonder if we're going to see that leak over into consoles where they're not so much getting exclusive games, it's timed exclusives and little snippets for whatever platform you're on.
Well, I feel like this was kind of beta tested long ago with like pre-order bonuses where you get like little knickknacks that you couldn't get unless you pre-ordered or whatever. So I'm surprised it took this long because I feel like exclusives are mostly dead. You have your first-party studios, but you very rarely have third-party exclusives anymore. So I think to differentiate yourself, this makes a lot of sense. I hate it. I think it's really dumb that like a character as big as Spider-Man, that like are probably the most popular superhero in the world, is locked behind one console. I think that's kind of shitty, but I think that's probably like the best strategy going forward if you're not able to lock up exclusives.
I think my favorite counter proposal I heard to, balance things out, because surely Microsoft, whenever this was announced, looked at Square and said, "The hell."
The hell? Yeah, exactly. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
So I think my favorite suggestion was somebody said they should give them Spawn.
Oh yeah, that's so even. Todd
Well,
McFarlane, like, yes, finally,
finally,
back
I,
at it.
My time
I,
is
bel
now.
I belong in the Avengers.
Yeah, I mean, Sony actually has done this for a very long time in Destiny, where, if you play on PlayStation, you get like an extra dungeon and an extra set of armor and stuff like that. So, to my mind, I'm kind of disgusted to see this spreading, because it was totally cancerous in Destiny, and I have no optimism that it'll be any better for other games.
Well, I seem to remember back when Arkham Asylum came out, I feel like the Joker missions in that game were exclusive to PlayStation for a while. So you're right, it is nothing new, and it sucks.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Obviously it only hurts players because everybody was going to have Spider-Man and now only some people are.
This is for the players.
It's for the console warriors. I've certainly seen my fair share of Sony fanboys very excited to get this, you know,
I'm,
winning
ex-
blow in
I'm
on those
excited to play as
Microsoft
Spider-Man in this
boys.
awful game. It's gonna be great.
Yes, that is the secret little bonus here is that it doesn't really matter because this game looks pretty lousy, and I don't know that it's going to do any business beyond the first few months.
Well, speaking of PlayStation being like uncustomer friendly, this PS4 controller thing, like about how you can't play PS5 games with PS4 controller, that's such garbage. Especially how they're trying to spin it as like, oh, the PS5 has like the games have new capabilities that the PS4 controller doesn't have. Like, no, it doesn't. What are you talking about?
My perspective on this, when I buy a console, it comes with a controller, and I almost never play multiplayer on console, or when I do, it's online. So I don't really need to bring my PS4 controllers forward.
Well, here's my qualm though is like my PS4 controllers had a bad history of breaking. Probably every couple years I'd have one break, and I feel like that's pretty unique. So, but what if like these controllers have problems out the gate, like they're broken? You have to go spend $59.99 or let's be real, more on a new controller. But when you have these PS4 controllers that still work on PS4 games and still work for browsing the OS, but you can't play them with new games, inconvenient to me.
Much like the Pikmin noise earlier, it's not surprising because I mean, obviously, this is really how consoles have been pretty much forever. The only exception that comes to my mind is the PS2. I believe you could use PS1 controllers on that. Could
You
you not,
could,
Derek?
you
You
could.
could. Okay, so you could, but obviously they abandoned that with the PS3. You couldn't use PS2 controllers on that for obvious reasons. But it's one of those things. I'm not like too offended by it because, like you, Setzer, I mean, if I were to get a PS5, I would have one controller, and my wife doesn't really play games that you would play on a PS5, and I might play with Derek, but Derek would presumably have his own PS5, so he could bring his own controller. There's very few situations where I'd find myself needing an abundance of controllers to do something. That said, it is, I think, pretty unfortunate when you compare it to the Series X or the Series S or whatever it is at this point, where all of your controllers going back to the Xbox One will continue to work, which is kind of nice. And I think what really sticks out to me about this most of all is Sony has been playing pretty hard on the notion that the PS5 is a clean break. It is a true next generation system. That is their marketing tagline. But I think people should remember that that is exactly what it is. It is just a marketing tagline. So when they say this is a true next generation console, that is code word for it's a new console, so we can get away with, oh, what about all those accessories you bought? I guess they don't work anymore. So you better pay up and get a few more controllers for probably $70 each. A lot of fanboys will treat it as like it's going to have new games that couldn't be done on the PS4. And I think we all know that's not true for the first year or so, probably. So it's just a marketing thing to get you to spend money on their new accessories and their new games and all that. It's not something to be excited about, really.
Well, you'd see some real uproar if Microsoft like said you couldn't use Xbox One controllers because they look
You
exactly the
wouldn't.
same.
I think that it's totally the accepted default for console
It
players to
is.
just
It
like
is.
buy new controllers. If Microsoft hadn't said that you can reuse your old controllers, nobody would have cared.
Well, no, I'm saying it because like if you look at the Series X controllers, they look just like the Xbox One controllers. So if they said you need new controllers, be like, well, why? They look the exact same. At least with the
No,
PS5, yeah, come on.
no,
If you look,
I guarantee, if Microsoft had said you need to buy new controllers, even though they look the same on the outside, oh, there's something a little special on the inside, da 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 da, people would have ate it up. Nobody would have cared.
okay, I think people
I
do
mean,
care
that's how
about
it's been.
this.
Nobody cared that you can't reuse 360 controllers on the
Well,
Xbox.
they look different. They have
They look
No,
different.
that was
They're
a
not
that was a
different at
different
all.
that was a different time though, because I think what's really different about this specific console leap is that more than ever before, these new consoles, are just the old consoles but beefier.
Yeah,
So the idea
yeah,
that suddenly these accessories aren't compatible, it'd be like buying a new computer and it's like, we don't do USB. It's like having an Apple device.
yeah. But I
We
mean,
don't
that's the
support this
PC
no more.
perspective on
Yeah,
things. That
I I
consoles have
know,
never really
but that is
been
but in
privy to
some ways
that.
that has started to trickle down with, these we had these half step consoles the last generation with the One X and the PS4 Pro
Hmm.
that that I think that helped put console players more in the PC mindset, and especially with Xbox having their compatibility across generations. I mean, I think there was some, especially after they came out and said that controllers were going to be backwards compatible. I think there was some reasonable expectation that maybe Sony would do the same, but they're going to stick to their marketing tagline so their online defenders can sing their praises and spend $70 on four new controllers for their new device.
My point is that Sony the DualShock 5 looks vastly different than the DualShock 4. So defenders can point to that. I'm just saying the Xbox fanboys don't have the same leverage if they had went that way.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I think if somebody told me about the PS5 controller, I'd say, yeah, they made it look different so that they could get away with this.
Yes.
Like, because the PS4 controller, besides breaking way too much and having terrible rubber on the joysticks,
And the stupid light that drains the
perfectly functional
batteries.
controllers. Yes, perfectly functional. Really, no need. I never
I'm,
felt like, oh, these controllers need this or that to be better or more intuitive.
I'm actually upset they brought the light back because
That is a bummer.
Yeah, I hate that light. It's
like
It serves
annoying.
no purpose.
It
drains
shines
battery
on the
life.
TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shines on the TV, and the battery life on those controllers is just preposterously bad.
Like, yeah, the Xbox controller lasts like 15 hours with fresh batteries. I feel like the PlayStation's like
I mean, yeah,
five.
pay for those batteries though.
Well, that's true. You know what? That's true. I take any compliments back.
Of course, buy the. Never mind. Nope, nope. It's all terrible.
I have rechargeable batteries, so I'm all good, baby.
Well, another new game coming out, and I know you guys aren't so much on the Destiny train. Outriders. Have you guys looked at this at all?
Yeah, I have. It seems really interesting. Like when I first saw the description on the docket of it being a looter shooter or a skluter, as you put it, I was like, "Oh, I don't give a shit about this." My wife was even like listening to me watch. Like, what were you listening to? I was like, "Some game I don't give a shit about." But as I was watching, I was like, "This seems kind of interesting." It looks like it's hitting like those Mass Effect vibes and is combining with a looter shooter. So it
Really?
looks okay.
I guess mechanically, you're right. It does look a lot like Mass Effect 3 multiplayer to me.
Hmm.
But in terms of quote unquote vibes, this looks so painfully generic.
Oh, it does. Well, I was turned off quickly, even though I got turned around when they're like talking about how it's like an RPG and stuff, and they're talking about like skill trees and whatnot. I'm like, oh god, I don't need another RPG shooter. But it seemed like trying to fill a void that Mass Effect has left, and I'm okay with that.
I think if there was one positive takeaway from Mass Effect Andromeda, it's that kind of third person shooter RPG gameplay style has a lot of potential, even if the story doesn't live up to it. But the only other real redeeming ish factor of Andromeda was the fact that it kind of parasitized your nostalgia for Mass Effect, which itself had a really unique aesthetic and a really unique vibe. Whereas Outriders, I gotta question the point of an RPG if it doesn't have a unique setting, it doesn't have an interesting story. So we'll see where this one ends up.
Well,
You know,
it'll live and breathe by the writing. Like if you can make interesting character dialogue, it kind of makes up for the crappy world, you know?
Schlooters in general don't have a good track record with story. So
No.
we'll see which one this hews a little closer to single player Mass Effect or, Diablo, Destiny, Schluter shitfest.
Well, I mean, yeah, it just looked like it was going for a type of shooter that I would actually play.
A little more single player focus. A little more
Yes,
linear.
yes, it didn't look like because another one that you could play single player is Borderlands, and that has such obnoxious writing that I can't get into it. So if it can address those things, maybe I can get into a Schluter. We'll see.
As a fan of
Well,
the book by S.E. Hinton, I was really thrown off by how different this game looked.
but
Well done.
speaking of more single-player bent shooters, Anthem has a full BioWare story that you can play through all on your lonesome. Uh,
Yeah, you have to.
yeah, because there's no one else playing it.
Yeah.
But they recently started teasing some of their revamp efforts, and I gotta say, this looks an awfully lot like Destiny. I know this game caught a lot of flack during, the release meltdown because they talked about how they didn't want to learn from Destiny, and now it's like, instead of learning from Destiny's mistakes, they're just copying it wholesale, and I don't know which one's worse.
Well, I tell you, I think the original one's worse because the game was so obviously inspired by Destiny. The fact that they were talking about it being like this revolutionary Eric Clapton or whatever the hell they called it game in development is
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan. There we go. I knew it was,
Eric Clapton.
trust me, I don't know music, so I had to think of a white singer guy. But the Bob Dylan of games or whatever, like the fact that they were like, well, we can't talk about our biggest competitor, and that is so arrogant. So
yeah.
I think that's slightly worse.
We'll see. I'm interested to see where it turns out, but hey, this could be the Schluter for you, my man.
I hope it copies Destiny in that every month it seems like I have to follow like whether or not the fan base is happy or sad, or like it's the worst game ever or the best game ever.
Oh man, Anthem release was awesome for news like that. It was a second only to Fallout
It was.
76.
It was.
The Anthem Reddit was always a place I went to for much joy.
A quick burst of Schadenfreude.
Yeah, it's no. I've gone recently. It's no longer quite as enjoyable.
Alive.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I was say.
Anybody still playing this game? I've been on for 20 minutes. I can't find a group.
Well, that was me and Bloodborne ringing the bells. No one coming. Like, come on, play with me. At least Bloodborne's 2015. Anthem is last year.
Was it really last year?
Yeah, February
Jeez.
2019.
Oh my gosh.
I know, time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're stuck inside for 5 months.
Well, I won't go into the obvious segues there. Speaking of sitting aside for 5 months, China.
Yeah, speaking of brutal isolation and quarantine, everybody was really excited to see that financial transactions with Tencent were being blocked at the federal level, only to find out that that does not impact Tencent's video game subsidiaries. So
my
Warframe
Fortnite Battle
lives
Pass
to
is
die
safe.
another day.
Yeah, I was like excited, like, oh boy, we're about to get some change in this industry, and then they're like,
Yeah.
no, just kidding. By the way,
Kinecon was looking real dire this year.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh no.
I was thinking like we could get some change coming, some much needed change. Well, this is not going to impact video games, so bummer.
Yeah, tell me about it. I at least looked forward to the chaos, but hey, what can you do?
What can you do?
Apparently, VR is still maintaining its popularity surge.
No
after
fucking shit. You spend like $900 or whatever insane amount you have to spend for the Steam Index. What is that? Is that Steam Index? Or
Yeah, Valve.
okay.
Index.
Valve
Valve
Index.
Index. Okay, you spend that much money on a Valve Index. Of course, you're gonna keep playing VR games. Like, oh, I'm done with Alex. It was a fun 30-hour ride. Guess I got to retire my VR headset. No, you're gonna download VR Chat and like Super Hot VR and try all that shit because you spent a ton of money. So, duh.
That said, everyone I know who has a VR headset does exactly what you just said they won't do, which is they have it in their house. It's sitting somewhere on a shelf. You'll come over and see it and go, oh, that's kind of cool. Can I play with it? They go, oh, yeah, I'll pull it out every once in a
Is
while.
it
And that's
PlayStation
kinda that.
VR they have?
No, this person is a tech worker, and they had I actually don't remember the name of it, but it appeared to be quite the nice little VR setup,
Oh,
and
okay.
it just sits in their house, and when guests come over, they might ask to play it, and then they'll pull it out, but that's kind of that.
Well, fair enough.
See, on the other hand, I know a few guys who have Valve indices. Each one has a copy. And they're very much like Derek said, where it's like, okay, I beat the game that I bought this for. Now I'm going to try out a ton of little games. The caveat is that stage does not seem to last too terribly long.
No, no, it's that's. I mean, neither of you have VR, do you?
No.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
I mean,
I
I'm
to
I'm
me it's
open
like
to it.
interesting. I'm kind
I
of
don't
like
think the
open to
technology
it.
is there yet.
It's
I've played it, and
it
I think the technology is there, but the games aren't there.
yeah. That's always been the thing is that like Alex was such a big deal because it was actually this big high budget value game and it was made just for VR. But, from my perspective, as someone who could not care less about that game, like just looking around the VR landscape, it's like that's it. And then there's a whole bunch of other garbage on the side. So it's
Yeah.
not something I could ever invest in. And if I did, I would be like, your friends. I'd play Super Hot VR and go, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I'd play like one or two other things before it becomes that piece of shame on my mantelpiece that all my friends can see and ask me about. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's kind of cool.
Well, yeah, it's one thing for Valve to make a game like that because they're flush with money and it's like their own platform. So it's like if it fails, it doesn't really matter. Like they made the Index, so I'm sure they're happy to sell any of those. But you're not going to see like a big AAA make a VR exclusive game because that's a gigantic risk. Like you sink all this money in and the attach rate's just not there. So if it's a flop, you wasted all this money. So it's just not going to happen
Well,
until there's more attachment.
it's like I said earlier, where it's typically indie games that innovate mechanically and AAA games that bring polish and technological refinement.
Right.
And right now, I feel like we still need maybe another 5 years of gameplay innovation before we see like a formula that AAAs can cash in on. I mean, if you look at Alex, yeah, that's the big quote unquote AAA VR game, but there are indie games that have done more or less the same thing mechanically for a long time now, and it really kind of highlights the mechanical stagnation of VR, where 99% of these games, at least from what I've seen, you're just kind of teleporting around.
Right.
You highlight a spot on the ground and you teleport there, and then you look around and maybe you shoot at something or you slash a sword and then you teleport to another spot. And I don't think that that's got enough depth to it for a AAA showpiece game.
Well, I completely agree with what you're saying, but I also believe like if there was a higher attach rate for VR, you'd see studios just shit out games of AAA like with like minimal gimmicks because that's what
Oh
they
yeah,
do. So
yeah,
so until that point, until like where people have it, they won't even try with that.
exactly. I think once someone stumbles upon the VR formula with a good attach rate, then we'll start to see AAA riffs on it.
Right, because they don't want to take that risk. Like you put a ton of money into a game and it's like got a 1% of like I think the Steam rates was like 1.4% of players are using VR, which is not enough for a AAA to make that leap.
Well, speaking of low risk games, Sega announced the Persona 4 PC port was so successful that they're going to start porting more of their old games to PC.
God,
What?
goddamn! Like when this
Yeah.
when the first when we talked about this, I think this was our first or second episode. I said Atlas is like sitting on a treasure trove of old games, and it's like this was the biggest no shit move ever, releasing Persona 4 Golden, and surprise, surprise, it sold well. And then when they said it like exceeded sales expectations, like, are you guys like high? This I was obviously going to be a crazy popular game on Steam, like
No
Persona,
way.
like
Are you
Do you
kidding
think
me?
they're just like really self-conscious? Like, oh, I don't know, that Persona thing is still pretty niche. You think
Well,
you think
yeah,
anybody will buy it?
Atlas has always been more of a niche publisher, but by the
Persona
same
5's
vein,
changed that.
yeah, I mean, JRPGs were never really popular on PC.
That's true, but I think the PC landscape has changed. A lot of people have Steam accounts that you wouldn't assume would. And Persona 4 Golden is a game that was locked away on the PS Vita, where like 5, 6 people played it. And now is like, all right, well now we're releasing it and it can be played on toasters. Like, of course it's gonna sell well. This is, Persona 4 Golden is an all-time classic.
I think you're right, but from a business perspective, I can totally see where they're coming from, being a little hesitant about it. Like I said, there aren't a lot of JRPGs on PC. It's new territory.
That's true, but I it would be like saying like there's no Mario games on PC. We're releasing Mario Odyssey, and we expect 5 people to buy it. Like,
Well,
yes,
Mario is a little bit different from, Persona,
well,
which
yes,
again, Atlas games are kind of niche.
obviously Mario's like it's hyperbole, but Persona is no longer like a niche RPG series. Like
No, you're totally right there.
there was some dude at work that does not play video games, and this is like before Royal, and I heard him talking about Persona 5. I would never have guessed he played video games.
Yeah, I had the same experience at my old job, actually. People who I never would have guessed were playing video games were talking about Persona 5 of all things. I mean, I
Right.
guess it's just that stylish.
Obviously, eyes are on the Persona series, so I feel like Persona 4 Golden was a no-brainer. I think Persona 3 Fez would be another like obvious no-brainer. They're also releasing crap on Switch, like they released Catherine Full Body. I don't know how that did. I assume it did okay. Catherine is actually niche. If that had been mediocre on Steam, I would understand that hesitation, but I think Sega is sitting on such a stockpile, and Atlas too, that it's just so obvious.
And the real no-brainer is that Persona 4, Persona 3, doesn't matter which. You put any of those on Switch,
Oh,
immediately
yeah.
top of the chart in probably, at least America and Japan, without a doubt.
Oh, for sure. A way more niche franchise, Trails of Cold Steel, has released on the Switch, and it's selling quite well there. And it's very similar to Persona and how it plays. So, I mean, come on, guys. So, Sega emphasizing like ports and stuff, no shock to me at all.
Well, on the other hand, games that don't make a lot of money, apparently. Tokyo RPG Factory.
Oh, what a
Derek called
shockaroo.
it. He predicted the
Universe
future.
bends to Derek's whim.
Their goal is to target old men like me, and you want to make these RPG games that echo RPGs from the past. However, they make them soulless, so the people that are actually into the old RPGs don't like these games. Me, I think I Am Setsuna is hot fucking garbage, and that was their first one, and so I feel like everyone else kind of caught on and just don't buy it because they're not going to attract new fans. Like, hey, this game plays like Chrono Trigger, a game from 1994. Get hype. And that's not going to get people in. So, yeah. And the fact that it's a big losses, Tokyo RPG Factory is like a budget game maker. So the fact that they have big losses with shoestring budgets, big failure.
I definitely think there's an audience for double A, pseudo indie, classic JRPGs.
Yes. Make
But
them
having
good.
played Oninaki and having said previously, I liked it, but I know it's bad. I can definitely see why they're taking these big losses because that game, if it didn't come in a bundle, I would have never bought it.
And you could see that declining. Like, I feel like Setsuna had some like buzz,
It did.
and then Lost Sphere had a lot less buzz. And then by the time Oninaki came out, it was I had heard about it on one podcast, and then I heard Setzer talk about it, and that's it.
I agree completely with Seth. There is totally a market for old AA indie sort of
Yes,
thing.
Derek exists.
Yes,
He's right
I exist. I would buy these games, but you have to make them like soulful. You have to make them like worthy of existing. Like if you play these Tokyo RPG Factory games, the Tokyo RPG Factory name makes perfect sense because it is just factory made, bland, soulless garbage.
Yeah, I have to give him credit for being honest up front.
Yeah, they are honest. They tell you what it is. I suppose it's like dead dove inside. What am I expecting here? Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's kind of sad that like I would say the most notable indie RPG studio is kind of going down. But I mean, there are plenty of good indie RPGs out there that are way more like worth your time and probably cost less. Like Undertale costs less than Sets than I would imagine and is a million times more soulful. So you look elsewhere for your games.
Like I said, I would have never bought Oninaki otherwise because the price on it is it's $50 on Steam right now, and I wouldn't pay $20 for that game.
Well, yeah, when Setsuna came out, it was 40, and that's what I paid for it. So
That's insane.
well, I was
Yeah.
well, yes, I was furious,
And I bought it.
yes,
and I
I
was even
bought it.
angrier.
Yes, I was. Well, it's the story is FF10. It's just FF10 story. So immediately I'm all right. Which,
Hey, wait a minute, I've seen this before.
right. Well, I mean, an FF10 is based off a Japanese legend, but no one wants to hear about that. Just, yeah, play other games. I think we've got all ground covered, so we're going to call it for this week. So you can reach us on Twitter at allofthedaypod or via email allthedaypodcast@gmail.com. This is Derek.
I'm Setzer.
And Chestin.
And we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Adios.
See ya.